Hi, I wanted to give a quick introduction to the scraper blade. Doing this for a friend who asked me how to sharpen one, and a particular fondness for this as a tool because it allows you to cut a very thin amount of material off of the piece of wood that you're working on, or depending on how you sharpen it and how you use the tool, you can actually use it for some rough shaping. It's a pretty versatile tool. One of my professors at RIT suggested that this was pound for pound the most powerful tool in the wood shop. To sharpen it, you need to address a couple things with some special tools. A mill bastard file to shape the edge perfectly square and perpendicular at 90 degrees. I actually use a little block of wood that I cut to hold the file. And I use it to position the scraper, so I end up with a perfect 90-degree cut on the edge. Then you need a burnisher. This is a fancy pants one, which is teardrop shaped, but the burnisher will allow you to literally move this hardened metal around. First you mush it out of the edge, and then you roll the burr with the burnisher. So other options are different shapes, but they sharpen up the same way. You can obviously just do different things with them, like scrape an inside radius, which is very useful. So basically, I'll point with my burnisher. First step, square up the edge, remove any sign of the previous burr that you had on there. If it's a brand new scraper blade, it still needs to be squared up. Some people take this step further than I do. I go with what works, and I can work with the surface right off of the mill bastard file. Next, you use the burnisher to draw the metal out past the edge, so you're pushing it from here out into these little ears. That's the next step. The last step is you use the burnisher to roll these ears into a cutting edge. So here you can see a picture. It literally turns the edge around and hooks it, because the angle of that hook is what does the cutting as you push the tool. So as you're working, you'll feel what the right bend that you put into the tool is and the right angle. And as you scrape and as that burr wears down, both the flex and the angle will vary. When it's not cutting anymore, you go to your next edge. When you work through all four edges, you come back to the start, cut off the burrs, draw them out, roll them again. Some people will say second time through, you can draw them back out and then re-roll them. I do that, but with mixed results. It's never as effective as filing off the edge and starting from the beginning for me. So I usually don't mess around. I go straight to that step. You're going to want to have a few things on hand. You can see I have some oil, which I'm putting on the scraper right now. You need a little oil. You need solvent, soap and water, having a sink. It's a good way to clean up. But most importantly right now is work someplace where you don't mind contaminating the surface with oil. For me, it's the extension table of my table saw. Let's pretend I have a burr on here. You take your burnisher, and with the kind of broad, gentle sweep of the teardrop burnisher, work it back and forth with the scraper blade about, excuse me, a ½ inch off the edge. What this does is it knocks down the previous burr and prepares this edge to be filed. I mentioned I use a cheater block. Here's my block. It has a little notch to help register the file. There's a little V groove in here to catch the filings that come off. I use my thumb to hold the file in place, giving me a 90-degree relationship between the file and my surface. I put my scraper blade on and I push it, and I can feel it beginning to bite in. Again, this is a mill bastard file, single cut, fine. And I can see that filings are accumulating in the well. I rotate the scraper blade, I do the other edge. I mentioned that some people will take this now to a sharpening stone and go through a progression of grits to get a much finer edge. I am of the school of thought that once it's straight, smooth, rest will be done with the burnisher because I'm going to move the metal around anyway. Now for real, I take a drop and I'm going to put it on the surface of the scraper, and all the action occurs within kind of a ½ inch of the edge. So I'm now just moving that oil around. Okay, and I'll take what's left and I'll just rub it on the scraper. ½ inch from the surface, I'm going to work with the point of the, or near the point of the teardrop shaped burnisher. My burnisher is on the work about 3/4 inch. I'm going to draw it back and forth. And you see how I kind of roll it in the direction I'm going? Almost think of like petting a dog and their fur. I want to facilitate it by just laying this down so it's nice and smooth, and then I reverse it for the back stroke. Just a few strokes is going to slide the metal out this way. All the force is concentrated on this little teeny weeny point, hence the movement. I suppose my burnisher is not at a true 90 degree to the edge. You'll have to watch as I do it. I believe it just creates the littlest angle back and forth. That's it. That's pulled the edge. I'm now going to concentrate on the other one. It's good. Try to pay attention to how many strokes you've done. I am not, but you should. That's the first step. Second step, you slide the scraper off the edge. Now, I don't want to make contact so that it affects both my top burr and my bottom burr at the same time. I want to isolate the top burr. So I'm not coming at 90, I'm coming at like a few degrees past 90 on my first pass, and I'm using this little belly of the scraper near the point. I do the following progression: hard, less hard, done. And as I make that progression, I rotate the teardrop scraper so I finish with the broad part, which is more of a finishing pass for me, than the forming pass, which is what I'm doing now with a tip point. Some people do a different progression. They start soft, they finish hard. Entirely up to you. 1, 2, 3. That's my edge. Again. 1, 2, 3. I'm finishing at about 15 degrees. 1, that's it. Now clean up and we'll see what we've got. Just wanted to start with a quick word about the curved scraper. Don't try to sharpen the whole thing in one go. Isolate the section of the curve that you need for the job and just work on raising a burr for that section. It'll make your life much easier, and you're guaranteed then to have a good burr where you need it, as opposed to trying to do the whole edge, which invariably one section will not work because it's just too much to ask to raise a consistent burr around such an odd shape. Okay, so here we are. The great thing about a scraper is you've got 4 edges. So if you butchered one, you've got 3 others, so you should be able to keep working. The idea is that a scraper takes such a fine shaving, it's actually cutting the wood, that you can in fact cut against the grain, which is counterintuitive. If you tried that with a hand plane, you would certainly get tear out. But a scraper is such a fine cut, you can actually do that. Still recommend working with the grain direction, but I just wanted to point that out. So find a good edge. This is a narrow piece of wood. I've got this whole long edge to work with. You can work anywhere on the scraper. You can do pretty much whatever you want. I tend to hold it at a skew, put a little flex into it, and I'm going to just search for that perfect angle until it bites and I get shaving. And it works. It's taking out the table saw marks already. The wood is coming out. It's quite satisfying. The edge is still good. This is soft wood, but you'll get the idea. I'm not sure if this can be seen, but it's very, very thin. There's no structure to this shaving. It's a very fine shaving, and that's what the scraper blade's all about.